I don't think there will be a ceasefire, unless it's part of it's over. They've agreed on something, but Russia's not going to agree to just a plain ceasefire. They'll agree to the terms that they put forward. The five oblasts, the size of the Ukrainian army, the
I mean, how are they even getting anybody to fight?
well,
1.25 million dead?
I could pull out my I show these every Tuesday on the podcast I do on CDM Media, and it's also on my Substack. We show every week the forced conscription. They're beating, they're tackling people, men in the streets, beating them, forcing them into vehicles, and the fights are unbelievable. And what
That's their recruitment? They
that's
beat
their
the shit
recruitment.
out of their
Forced
people to
conscription
fight for their country.
Yep. And so I've said this numerous times. I believe never in the history of warfare has a country won a war where they had to force their soldiers to join.
Fucking believable.
Yeah. No one wants to join. Ukraine Zelensky and Ukraine took a lot of criticism from Biden, Jake Sullivan, and Austin, that they did not immediately draft 18 to 23-year-olds. They started, I think, at 25. They went down to 23. They still haven't drafted, but they've done the selective service thing. But when Zelensky established martial law, he closed the borders. So 18 to 23-year-olds were not allowed to leave the country. He just changed that about 6 to 8 weeks ago. The day after he did it, every border crossing was swamped. All the 18 to 23-year-olds pretty much have either fled. Yeah. And what does that tell you? It tells you that the messaging, 1, 2, 3, what are we fighting for, doesn't make sense to the actual people who are supposed to do the fighting. So when you have these actual citizens of Ukraine fleeing, fighting for their lives, bystanders join in and help the recruits against these forced conscriptors. You'll see the massive fights, and women too come over. They start beating on these guys. Let them alone. Let them alone. This happens every day all across Ukraine. Because the logical why doesn't make sense. They see people disappear. They realize the truth is, whispered among the people of Ukraine, what's really going on, who's really trying to win this war, whose war it really is. And it's not Ukraine. It's the EU. It's the globalists. And they're the ones telling Ukraine, keep fighting to the last Ukrainian. But the Ukrainian people, the ones that are, the go to war age, are having nothing of it.
So they basically don't have a country.
No, they don't. It's not a real country. And that's not nothing against Ukraine. I love Ukraine. I love the Ukrainian people. But if you just take what Zelensky did. So first off, on Zelensky, in 2018, 2017, he became the lead in a comedy show, Servant of the People, which the producers of which famous producers in Hollywood, were two of the biggest oligarchs in Ukraine, multimillionaire, billionaire oligarchs. The billionaire decided, hey, and probably in cahoots with the Biden State Department and CIA, because they needed a candidate. They needed someone for the 19 election, and it had to be a stooge. So they decided, let's make Zelensky a candidate. So up to that point, Zelensky had never even tweeted any position on any political statement, any political event. He had never spoken about any political proclivities. He had never written anything. He had never spoke. When he announced his presidency, his run for the president and his new party, which was called the same thing as the sitcom, the Servant of the People Party, he refused to debate the other candidates. He did no campaigning. Does this sound familiar? He put out no, no campaign promises, no platform. And I think 4 months after he announced, even though he was behind in the polls, the election happened. He won 73% mysteriously of the vote. The first thing he did was outlaw all political parties in Ukraine except his own party, the Servant of the People. And by outlawing them, making them against the law, this is, if you read the definition of a totalitarian regime, that's what they do. There's no, they outlaw competition, political competition. So what that did was allow him to take over a supermajority of the Rada, because all these other people in the Rada, that's their Congress, were not allowed to run. So they just stacked it with new Servant of the People, and now the Rada has a supermajority for his party. He also outlawed press. All independent press, newspapers, television stations were shut down. Only stations that run in Ukraine still to this day are either Ukrainian government or NGO, George Soros sponsored stations. So you outlaw political competition, you end any ability, freedom of information, and then he ended freedom of speech too. There's no, you can't criticize the government, no right to protest. Those are all the hallmarks of a totalitarian regime. That corruption scandal that just broke it was a small one, 100 million off the energy sector, where his sidekick was indicted. He fled the country. He's now back working for him. He just not in the same role he was before. So corrupt to the bone. This is not a government of the people. It's a government installed. Zelensky's out of the country more than he's in country. And again, that's a pattern too that should make everyone question, what leader in contentious times leaves the country even once? None. He's gone, in the last 2 years, he's been out of Ukraine more than he's been in. Usually he's in Europe, gallivanting around Europe under the guise of collecting funds. But you have to ask, how can he do that? Well, he can do it because there's no competition. He's the stooge, and he's earned his right to maintain that from his EU handlers, from his globalist handlers, and from he's got American handlers too, the neocons, the left, the people who put him in power from the Obama and Biden administrations still want him to stay in power. They still keep the propaganda going. But the reality is men are dying by the thousands every day for no reason. Fake war. They don't even know what they're fighting for. They're definitely not fighting for Ukraine right now. And their leadership is also just a canard, something other than what it seems to be.
Well, I can see why there's only a 12% chance of a ceasefire by March 31st.
Yeah, he's not having any of it. Trump just said it a few days ago that Zelensky's the main barrier. He said Putin's already said, hey, I want to end the war. And finally, Trump's got good information. He's saying it now. He's talking about the Ukraine, over 1 million casualties. He's talking about they can't win. They have no military industrial complex. So if you can't make bullets and beans along with, ammunition, weapons, how can you fight an ongoing war against a superpower? And
let me answer that for you, because we send them all of our shit.
Yeah, very true. Billions of dollars. I think 300 billion we sent them with no strings attached.
Do you have any insight on when they will run out of manpower?
I think they're there right now. So Russia brought in 443,000 recruits last year, just to give you an idea of the standard. No one knows what Ukraine brought in, but it's believed to be somewhere in the double-digit thousands, so 50 to 99,000. So that right there just tells you, they can't keep up. And on this battlefield, Ukraine doesn't rotate their forces. If you joined in 2022 and you're still alive, you're still out there. There's no ETS date, which every soldier, is counting off the days till they get to go home. We talk about you fight for the guy next to you. Yeah, you do. But, your foundational, what you're really fighting for is to go home to your family and, where you live. And they don't even have that. So they're dispirited. The command and control, the leadership of Ukraine is dysfunctional as can be, and we, again, the Obama and Biden administrations, who were the architects, along with the rest of NATO. The Brits have been hand in hand on everything. The French and Germans, to a slightly lesser extent, trained this army, and it was the same mistake we've made everywhere, from Vietnam forward. They decided we're going to build an army and it's going to be a NATO compatible army. So everything they built was to make it by the standards of NATO. And you can't, the lesson of Vietnam was don't try to build an American army in another country, a second world country who's got its own tradition of military customs, courtesies, protocols, and just ways of fighting. And it's the same thing in Ukraine. Most of the generals were Soviet trained. In fact, the commander-in-chief of Ukraine right now speaks Russian, was trained in Russia, Syrskyi. But, they don't care. Zelensky's in on the decision-making for combat. They're letting their guys die in these cities. I did an episode on this when Pokrovsk fell. We had a Ukrainian captain, talk to my guys on the ground and tell us how the thing unfolded. And he said, he gave this example. He said, when you're laying in a position for a long time, that position like the back of your hand, and everything around you. You've calculated time, distance from every terrain feature, every tree, every rock outcropping. And with Pokrovsk, we knew where the Russians were, and my front line guys knew if they get to that copse of trees over there, this massive, forest belt that protects the farmlands, then we're dead in the water. We've got to fall back. And fall back is not retreating. It's just fall back. That's called a supplementary position, which you always have in the defense. And so once the Russians made it to that point, to that copse of trees, they called in and said, hey, we've got this all set up. We've got alternate positions. Time to fall back. Roger, stand by. We've got to get permission from higher. That went all the way back to Kyiv and Zelensky and Syrskyi, and the answer was no, not 1 inch, stay and fight. And about 3 weeks later, they were surrounded, most of them killed, many of them captured. And the same thing just happened in Uye-Puye. It's a city down south Ukraine. Same thing. The guys knew if they make it to that position, we're surrounded. We're in a cauldron, and then you're dead, because the cauldrons in this war, because of the terrain and the technology, the drone technology. Whenever you see a position, that means that a 10 by 10 kill zone sits in front of that drone kill zone. So if you move up to here, now that 10K kill zone goes 10K from that point. So that's why when that Ukrainian captain said, when they make it to there, we got to get out of here, you listen to the guys on the ground. You listen to the guys who are assessing the reality of the situation on the ground, and they did not. And they continue that pattern, and it's because they're trying to keep this propaganda thing going that, hey, we can win. We just need more time, more money.
No matter where you're watching the Sean Ryan Show from, if you get anything out of this at all, anything, please like, comment, and subscribe. And most importantly, share this everywhere you possibly can. And if you're feeling extra generous, head to Apple Podcasts and Spotify and leave us a review.